This is The Weeping Woman. In acidic green and purple, the painting portrays a woman convulsed by grief. It was painted 4 months after Picasso's most famous political work, Guernica, and it was forged from the same horrific subject matter, the infamous German attack on the ancient Basque city during the Spanish Civil War. According to the gallery, The Weeping Woman is the most important 20th century work it's acquired, and it's certainly the most expensive. So criticism is almost inevitable, but it's not about to dim the gallery's enthusiasm for its masterwork.
I mean, we'd be terribly lucky if it went without any brouhaha at all. No, I mean, I think, someone asked me earlier today, we live in a Philistine nation, but a civilized city. So we're lucky here.
The alarm system had been fooled with a fake card saying the painting had been moved routinely. Responsibility for removing the painting has been claimed by a group calling itself the Australian Cultural Terrorists. In a letter to sections of the news media today, the group demanded a massive increase in funding for the arts.
Whatever they've done, if the picture is damaged or ruined in any way, then this gallery will never be able to afford another Picasso painting.
I can't imagine that anybody who had genuinely at heart the interests either of art or of art lovers could have perpetrated an action of this sort.
It was a day of dashed hopes. The gallery, far busier than usual as people came to see a notoriously blank wall, was searched thoroughly in the forlorn hope that the Picasso Weeping Woman had been hidden rather than stolen. There has been no more from the group claiming responsibility and threatening to destroy the painting next weekend if the demand for a bigger arts budget is not met. The frame, discarded after canvas and stretcher were removed, was examined by forensic scientists, but apparently yielded no clues. The value of the masterpiece has now been put at more than $2 million. It was not insured. The gallery could not afford the premium.
Just a day after the National Gallery of Victoria's director, Patrick McCackey, confirmed that his most prized acquisition had gone, the 70 attendants at the gallery left too. The attendants objected to increased security measures, which meant they could no longer sit down on the job. They met this morning to consider a gallery plan that some, but not all of their chairs be reinstated. But
the men have rejected those proposals at present. They propose to meet again tomorrow morning.
By then, union officials say, remaining differences should be worked out.
It's a bomb in the collection. And by that I mean it really detonates. It doesn't just fit in nicely. At the end of the modern European galleries, you have this appalling green, acid green face yelling her eyes out at you.
That was how the gallery's director, Patrick McCackey, described the painting during a radio interview in December last year. Well, the bomb has gone off. And it's gone off in Patrick McCackey's face. No insurance, deficient security, and no idea who the thieves are. The ransom has, however, placed some of Melbourne's more radical artists under suspicion. This is Fitzroy, the inner-city suburb where many of Melbourne's younger artists live, work and exhibit their wares. But in the galleries around here, it seems, no one's ever heard of the Australian cultural terrorists.
I would be very surprised if it was a group of artists who carried this particular manoeuvre off.
Well, it's the first time I've heard of them, so I don't know. I'm really interested to see the outcome of it and find out exactly who is behind it. From the demands that are made, it sounds that it's obviously someone who's involved with artists.
I just jumped up in the air and thought it was great, but I think that might be the general attitude by a lot of young artists anyway.
Have you ever heard of the Australian cultural terrorists?
No, that's the first time. I mean, that could have been formed over the last week. I mean, it doesn't mean it's been around since Palestine or anything like that.
You ever thought about stealing it yourself?
Yes, I have. But I mean, I think everybody thinks those sort of things anyway. I mean, it's such an easy painting to steal because it's small. Once you take the frame off, you can put it under an overcoat or something, and out you go.
The artists here might not agree with the terrorist methods, but the call for more funds has struck a chord. This year, the arts budget is $92 million, but $80 million of that will go on things like the State Library, the Museum, the Victorian Arts Centre, and the National Gallery. The $12 million that's left will go to art development projects. Very little will end up in the hands of struggling artists like Tim Jones.
The operation was very sophisticated. The thieves apparently managed to neutralise the security wires attached to the picture, and they were able to produce the security card that allowed them to move the Weeping Woman. But what could happen to the masterpiece now? With me a little earlier this evening was Sue Hewitt, Australian representative of Christie's. Miss Hewitt, if the ransom isn't achieved, what would be done with the painting?
Well, of course, I do hope they're not going to do what they suggest they're going to do, but alternatively I would...
That's destroy it?
That's destroy it, yes. I think that they would probably take it out of the country.
Well, who'd buy it then?
I think it'd have to be sold really through a sort of rather unscrupulous dealer, because certainly it couldn't come up for auction because it's too public. We prepare our catalogues, illustrate them. We also would know about the history of the painting. You see, most of Picasso's works are well documented, you see, and it would be identifiable.
Are there dealers who are well-known fencers?
I'm sure there are.
So you've no doubt there would be a market for it?
Oh, yes, but there's certainly nothing like its true market value.
What happens then? Does it have to be viewed in a locked room with no one present? What value would the purchaser ever get from it?
Well, I suppose a certain amount of feeling of pride in owning something. Oh, of course, they can't share it with their friends, but it does happen, so it's not an unusual occurrence.
And people buy a painting that they know to be stolen and then lock it away somewhere themselves?
Absolutely.
What are the physical problems of it? It's on a stretcher, we understand. Does it then get sort of rolled up and slipped under the shoes in a suitcase?
Well, certainly it'd have to be rolled up, but the problem is the paint. You know, if you are rolling it too tight, you could actually crack the paint and then eventually it would fall off. So it is very, very difficult to roll a canvas for any length of time. I mean, you've got to think it's 24 hours to get out of the country, really, in a suitcase.
Do most people who've been involved with this sort of thing have the conservative skills to get the painting out without damaging it?
Well, we've got to believe that these people are artists or in the art world, and so therefore they would have a certain knowledge of looking after paintings.
Well, finally, what would you do if it came Christie's way?
I'd ring the police, of course.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
There's only 48 hours left to the deadline set by the Australian cultural terrorists. One of their demands was for 5 annual prizes for young artists. But today came an offer which doesn't compromise the government, an offer from the Melbourne-based arts patron, engineering manufacturer Macpherson's Limited.
To provide 2 art prizes of $5,000 each in 1987 for artists under 30.
Mr McCackey says he'll be in the gallery all day Sunday awaiting the terrorists' response. In the meantime, gallery attendants who've been on strike since Tuesday, when their chairs were removed in a security shake-up, returned to the gallery today, with the promise of a working party on security and 15 of their 20 chairs. But there's still the question of strained relations.
A rift has developed, and it may take well a long time to heal, yes.
John Walker's Carlton Infanta 2 hangs in the spot once occupied by the Weeping Woman, the scratches on the wall being the only reminder that this space better fits another work of art.
The letter which arrived this morning is undoubtedly genuine. The handwriting on the envelopes is the same, and the second letter repeats a phrase from the first ransom demand that was kept secret by the police. The letter addressed to Arts Minister Race Matthews says, "If our demands are not met, you will begin the long process of carrying about you the smell of kerosene and burning canvas." But the letter added cryptically that the theft of Weeping Woman was performed by a group whose first desire was to return the painting. But this afternoon, Mr Matthews was taking a hard line, saying police will hunt them down and that the so-called terrorists face
criminal charges, carrying sentences of up to 10 years in jail.
Later, the director of the National Gallery, Patrick McCackey, pointed out that the second letter was sent just before 2 $5,000 art prizes were offered yesterday. So he hoped the Australian cultural terrorists
would at least reconsider, would at least pause to consider the offer which has been made about those 2 art prizes.
The deadline set by the thieves for the destruction of the painting runs out at 10 o'clock tonight. Mr McCackey says he'll be waiting by the phone at the gallery for any news of the Weeping Woman.
The fate of Picasso's Weeping Woman, stolen from Melbourne's National Gallery a week ago, is not known. The deadline set for the destruction of the painting passed at 10 o'clock last night, and since then there's been no word from the self-styled Australian cultural terrorists who say they have it.
Mr. McCackey still holds some hope that the painting hasn't been destroyed.
Well, naturally one feels increasingly apprehensive as deadlines go by, but I still have a sort of persistent hope that the picture will turn up.
The greatest disappointment for Mr. McCackey is that just before the Picasso was stolen, he was negotiating with a security firm to upgrade the electronic surveillance of the gallery. The shock of having the painting stolen and the days of waiting knowing that the Weeping Woman might have been destroyed are beginning to take their toll.
I mean, it's a hideous experience, don't worry. I mean, what you feel is nothing but ignominy and shame and increasing anxiety from which there's absolutely no relief or release.
Mr. McCackey is continuing his vigil by the phone today in the hope that he'll hear something about the Picasso. But as time goes on, the likelihood of good news must be diminishing.
Earlier, police released identikit photographs of 3 people seen acting suspiciously in the gallery shortly after the painting went missing.
About 25 police spent today in the National Gallery making another search for Weeping Woman in case she'd been secretly returned over the weekend or carefully hidden in the first place. They looked high and low, but nothing was found. Despite that, police still have a breakthrough. A woman says 5 people were lurking here in the costume gallery about the time the Picasso vanished, and these are the main suspects.
They looked directly at her, refused to take their eyes off her, looked quite intently at her, in fact. They didn't say anything amongst themselves. They didn't seem to lose interest in what they were interested in and walked briskly past where she was standing.
Police now doubt the theft is the work of black marketeers or professional criminals, and Melbourne broadcaster Bodan of 3RRR, who prefers to remain incognito, believes he spoke with one of the terrorists on Friday night.
He was desperate for me to ring the police and quote some numbers to them to show that he was for real, and he wanted me to tell them that he was going to burn it. And I didn't ask why, but I suppose because his demands hadn't been met.
Details of the call match those in a second letter sent by the terrorists over the weekend. Police are taking the link seriously. Late today, police revealed a third letter had been sent to the Office of Arts Minister Race Matthews. It read simply, "Thank you for your support. Phase 2 begins shortly." Police have confirmed the letter is authentic, but say the meaning of the term Phase 2 and a burnt match found inside the envelope is a mystery.
The Great Picasso Caper. It's been going on in Melbourne for 8 traumatic days. But today, dramatically, the focus of the search switched to Adelaide. ABC News has received a tip-off from an anonymous postman that the Picasso's being held at Adelaide's Experimental Art Foundation. In the best tradition of ABC News, we're hot on the trail. Using our usual tactics, we stormed into the building. Yes, this was the place, but we had to take it carefully. The cultural terrorists could have planned an ambush. But no, we were safe. And there it was. I mean, there they were, no fewer than 19 weeping women, which, if any, were real. This problem also confronted the members of the Special Crime Squad. They'd been called in on the request of the Victorian Major Crime Squad. Believe it or not, this was their best lead for the day.
In my opinion, no, I don't think Picasso is there.
In fact, the pieces were all painted by young Adelaide artists wishing to draw attention to the issues raised by the theft, like just how much money is spent on foreign art.
There are also a number of other questions about the extent to which this is going to send presumably the insurance rates for art galleries through the roof, and that's going to use up even more arts dollars on the maintenance of those institutions.
Of course, the real painting wasn't here. These are just replicas, but there was that smell of kerosene.
It was a phone call last night to the Age newspaper that led police across the road to a locker at the Spencer Street station. Gallery director Patrick McCackey paced anxiously for the hour it took forensic experts to arrive and remove the parcel. It was examined at their headquarters and authenticated. This morning, the champagne flowed and the Weeping Woman was revealed undamaged by a jubilant director.
It is going to be bolted to the wall and placed behind glass. If you want to take the painting next time, you will have to take the entire air conditioning duct.
The frame which the thieves had left behind at the time of the robbery made its way to the gallery for Saturday's public showing. Police later collected a letter sent to ABC TV News in Melbourne. It was identical to that included with the painting. It revealed that the saga had not ended. The Australian cultural terrorists claim we never look to have our demands met, and the return completes the first phase of our campaign. Arts Minister Race Matthews may also have been smiling today, but as Police Minister, he refused to toast the recovery. The $50,000 reward, he says, still stands for the capture of those who've promised to strike again.
All Victoria's art treasures are going to remain at risk so long as these people remain at liberty.
The irony of the whole matter, he says, is that money that may have gone to the arts must now be spent on gallery security.
Tuesday night, and police retrieved the stolen Picasso painting from a Spencer Street railway station locker after an anonymous phone call. Now, police say they believe the painting was put there at about 10 o'clock on Tuesday morning, because a train traveller remembers seeing two women with a similar brown paper parcel discussing getting a locker at that time. That witness's descriptions have led to this sketch of a woman, aged mid-30s to 40s, about 170 centimetres tall, who was wearing a camel-coloured coat and, according to the witness, was with a shorter woman with similar coloured but longer hair. Police are hoping they can find others who can give clearer descriptions of the women they believed are involved in the theft of Weeping Woman. But at least now they have stronger clues as to the identity of at least some of the Australian cultural terrorists.
Or that there is three, and perhaps more, as that we now have two women seen near the lockers with the parcel on Tuesday, and we have a male who makes the phone calls.
Police say even though the Australian cultural terrorists have returned their booty, they're still keeping 5 major crime squad detectives on the case, and that police hope will stop the ACT from doing anything else.
From now on, Picasso enthusiasts will have to admire the Weeping Woman through a sheet of perspex that's firmly bolted over the painting. But the gallery's other masterpieces are not so well protected. This work by Monet and this landscape by Paul Cézanne are attached to the gallery's wall by only simple hooks. But for today at least, there were plenty of gallery guards on hand to make sure the Australian cultural terrorists didn't strike again. Although right now the terrorists are probably more concerned about the police. Detectives say this sketch of a woman depositing the stolen painting at Melbourne's Spencer Street station has brought a good public response, and police are now confident of catching the thieves. Yesterday, police raided a city art studio and seized several items. Detectives would not say what had been taken, but warned that there would be more raids.
Victoria's National Gallery was very proud of its 1985 acquisition, the $2 million Weeping Woman.
It's a bomb in the collection. And by that I mean it really detonates. It doesn't just fit in nicely.
It was a prophetic call from Patrick McCackey, then director of the gallery, for the uninsured painting went off, albeit without a bang, out the door. Ransom notes from the Australian cultural terrorists followed, demanding support for young artists. Jan Senbergs, then a member of the Gallery Board of Trustees, believes the action was a protest against former Arts Minister Race Matthews.
Let's face it, Picasso was a revolutionary painter himself, and I don't think it was appropriate.
For 2 weeks, the police, Mr Matthews, Mr McCackey, along with the community, fretted over threats to pay a ransom or see the painting destroyed. Much to everyone's relief, it was left in a locker at Spencer Street railway station.
So I think it's become part of the folklore of Melbourne, not just the gallery, but Melbourne.
The $50,000 reward remains uncollected. The police file is still open, and the group's promise to strike again remains unfulfilled. Still, it's an anniversary worth celebrating, because with the return of the painting, it's one episode in criminal history that didn't end in tears.